Yeah? What does great look like? Hmm. Okay. And how about your practice? How's your spiritual practice going? Good, good, good. All right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, good, good, good. Okay, let's let the dust settle a little bit and just kind of sink into the session. It's only 7:01. For some reason it feels later, but people are starting to roll in. So just find yourself in the center of this moment. For those of you who have been practicing for a long time, it really should be a simple flip, right? It should be a simple shift from this directional living of your life to a state of arriving in this moment, right here, right now. And if you're not able to do that yet, just understand that's one of the things that comes with regular practice. That ability to just let it all go on a moment's notice and just stop everything. Oh, and someone's telling me I don't have my camera on. Let's do that. There we go. All right. So you need that ability to just stop. For most people in the beginning, the first 20 minutes are them just trying to stop. But for anybody who has then gone on and practiced 20 minutes more, you know that that stopping point is the true beginning of meditation. That's where the benefits and the clarity and the increased intelligence comes in, where you can suddenly just understand whatever you're looking at. So, to get yourself to a point where you can just flip right into that starting space quickly ends up being a very good use of your time. The way that you get to a point where you can do that, assuming you're not able to now, is you don't let a single day go by where you don't get to that starting point. It just means if you're about to go to bed, but you have not sat down and just systematically let go of everything and gotten to that zero space, then you go ahead and you lose a little less, you get a little less sleep that night, and you get yourself there just as a personal commitment to yourself. You have to draw a line somewhere. That's right, Anna, consistent habit. You have to draw a line somewhere in your life because nothing in life is going to ask it of you except this guy. you know that's my great skill, is I ask out of you. But you have to get to a point where you draw that line, and it's different for everybody. It can take people 5 years to get to a point where they really decide, okay, now I'm going to take this seriously. But the sooner you get there, the better. Because until then, you're just kind of treading water, aren't you? You know, life does a really good job of making it look like you're moving forward. I mean, think about TV, right? Any TV show does a really good job of making you feel like you're seeing something new, like you're really moving forward. But a new story on TV, it's incredibly rare, right? There are very few things that you watch that it's like, oh, I've never seen that before. Almost every story is a simple formula you've done 1,000,000 times. But that's the great illusion of TV. It makes you think that you're about to experience something new, and then it doesn't deliver. And that's kind of how life works. That's how the dream of life works. There's this constant sense that all of this running around in circles and people pleasing and family pleasing and child pleasing is getting you somewhere. And, you know, I mean, most of you have seen the results of that and then started over. But where does it get you? It gets you some nice connections. It gets you some people in your life, and that's good. But it's not an ultimate answer for anything. It's not that thing that at the end of your life, you're going to feel like you had really attained the goal of your life. I'm not saying that your time with your family and that your jobs are not important. They are. They're important to the story. And they are one of life's mechanisms for tempering your heart. But they're slow mechanisms. And if you're in a class like this, you're someone who actually has the capacity to sit down, open yourself up, and just step into accelerated work, accelerated awareness. And then you take that to your families and you take that to your job, and it actually makes you better at all of those things. But it's different, right? You put that first, and then everything else falls in line. Most people, they have that flipped. Most of my students over the years, you know, they have periods of time where that's in the first position, and then we go through maybe 5 years where that goes down to the second position, and we're just not saying anything about it, you know, because people know what they're doing. But at some point, you do have to be honest with yourself. You have to look up and say, I get a lot out of this. I need to actually practice it every day. And what I'm saying is the bare minimum is don't go to bed until you've reached that beginning point, that point that you get to in any meditation class, where all of a sudden you're landed, you're here, you're aware, and you're open. Get there every day. And then try and stay there for a while. Try and make that your home for a little while. But don't let a day pass where you don't at least get there. Because otherwise, entropy is the rule. Life is always going to be disassembling your gains. So you have to draw a line for every day. I'm going to get over that line every day. If it takes me 5 minutes, fine. If it takes me 20, fine. If I have a day where I am a mess and it takes me an hour, then that's a day where I sit there, suck at meditation for an hour, but then finally get over that line. And you know, those are the days where you need that. And the reason you do that is because in life, you are never standing still. In life, you are always either moving forward or going backwards. If you find yourself standing still, it's an illusion. It's just that you were moving forwards and now you've kind of stopped that work. And so there's a moment where it feels like you're standing still. But what's about to happen is the response to that yang push is now going to give you a yin backslide. And you're going to start to de-evolve in your progress. So you have to draw a line. You have to ask something of yourself. All right, so let's go into meditation. I think everybody here is a regular, so we shouldn't have to go into too much instruction, but attention at the forehead and crown, eyes somewhere on the floor in front of you or on a desk in front of you. And with your peripheral vision and all of your senses, just show up in this room at this moment. And from there, you're just going to watch your breath and you're going to let go of everything else that the mind tries to use to take you away. Go for it. That little discomfort you feel is just a few cycles that are still in motion from your day that don't know what to do with themselves. So just like watching a dog spin around 3 times so that they can lie down on their blanket, just let that cycle do its little spin so that it can stop. Let it all be exactly what it is. Nothing to hold down, nothing to throw away, nothing to manipulate, nothing to fix. That was your whole day. Now you're stepping into something new. You're stepping into this moment where everything is already done. You're stepping into this moment where you're not projecting an illusion of lack onto the screen of life. And since that illusion is the only thing that ever makes you feel like you need to do anything, you're done. Just be in this completed, open, living, breathing moment. Give yourself that vacation from your nonsense. Now you've been handed techniques. I've taught you the technique of moving down and up the mountain. I usually pull that one out when I'm feeling a lot of anxiety from one of you or many of you. But you don't need me to tell you to use one of those techniques. If you're having trouble stilling yourself, go ahead and direct yourself. Start at the head, move down to the heart, down to the lower center, come back up. Even if we start teaching, you can be doing that while we're working together. Just to start tempering your energy body. You've been shown many things that work. Do what works. It's funny, tonight there are these teachings that just keep kind of popping into the space and then disappearing. It makes me feel like I want to give you one of them, but I'm not sure what it means that they keep disappearing. Let's talk about how the mind interacts with life. Life is a mirror for the consciousness of sentient life. You know, it's this big reflecting screen for everything that everyone carries in their head. All of our expectations play themselves out on the screen of the mind. In shamanism, this is often discussed in terms of the dream time, right? Basically what people are saying, that life is a dream. Some Buddhists discuss it that way as well. And while that's true, it's a little problematic, because when you're asleep dreaming, you know, the screen of life is also impacted by what's in your mind. It's literally feeding onto the screen in real time. But for the most part, unless you're getting a visitation from a dead loved one or something, you know, or having a dream with your teacher, it's just you in there. You know, you're able to change things very quickly. You've got this really immediate cause and effect response. Whereas in the physical world, the immediacy of that cause and effect response depends on your spiritual evolution. So the more time you spend raising your energy vibrations, the more time you spend in meditation, the faster that cause and effect happens. That's usually not a good thing. You know, for a spiritual teacher, it's like if you get upset, like legitimately upset, and start throwing your energy around, you'll find that life just falls apart in all sorts of little ways and you can do real damage. But even if you're not, you'll disassemble it eventually. So that's one piece of it, right? For most people, there's this delay. But the biggest thing that makes it not like a normal dream is that you're sharing that screen with every other living creature on this planet. You know, those of you who have children, you're sharing that screen with your children. Those of you who have babies, you're sharing that screen with your babies. Those of you who have pets, you're sharing that screen with your pets. I mean, have you noticed how people respond differently to you than they do to your children? You know, a pure mind elicits a pure response from the screen of life. When we see a dog, and that dog is just projecting love and trust and interest, what they get back in return is a bunch of people that feel a lot of love and trust and interest in the dog. You know, your babies, before they reach that age where they're less clean in their heads, elicit that same thing. It's like everyone looks at them and just knows in their heart that they want to nurture them and take care of them, because there's no ill will coming off of the baby. Now, if that baby has parents that attract very bad things into their life, well, that baby has to share the screen with those parents. And so bad things might happen, or minor inconveniences. The point is not to point fingers or create a guilt game. The point is that this world is a screen on which you are projecting your mind. And so in that way, it's like a dream. But because you're sharing it with so many people and other beings, in that way, it's not like a dream. In that way, there are large pieces of it that you don't have a lot of control over. And then there are whole egregores, you know, so let's say you have a place that you work. You are tied in to the collective energy of that workplace. There's a whole egregore there. An egregore is a collection of individual consciousnesses that come together to create one thing. And it sort of just creates a system that anytime you look in that direction, you feel a certain way. And even after you quit, it takes a long time to get that egregore off of you. But that has an impact on the screen of your mind. You know, like my husband, when he's dealing with his work stuff, the way his mind impacts everything is it messes up his electronics. You know, so I would say at least on an every other week basis, he is in some sort of, oh my God, you have to help me. What am I going to do? I'm about to lose this entire document. My computer keeps freezing. I can't get in to go make X, Y, or Z happen. And I have to come in a meditative state. And I'm like, okay, just, you know, look over here and let me just do this and I can get in. And all the things the computer's doing for him, it doesn't do for me. And I'll see him like trying to raise his hands up to touch it, and I'll slap them down because if he touches the computer, it's going to be, that moment is going to fall under the will of his chaotic day, you know? And so I often have to kind of come in and create this little window of space where you can get a file off so that then if the whole computer is going to break down, you don't lose all these things and things like that. It happens a lot in my house. But that's because your world is a product of what you and everyone you're connected to are projecting onto the screen of your mind. Those of you who join religions, you end up in a whole egregore of that religion, a whole way of thinking, a whole sense of accountability. A lot of that accountability is beautiful and religious in nature, and then a lot of that accountability is, petty human stuff. When people choose to leave those things, it's often very hard on them. They often can't imagine who they are without it. And then they get out of it, and all of a sudden, that egregore falls off of them, and it's like suddenly these blinders are lifted. I've done that myself many times. Anytime I've left a teacher, it's been like that. It's this, how could I ever leave? But then when you get away from it, you just realize how manipulated you were by everything you were a part of. And it's such a relief. I remember I lived in LA for a long time, and there was just this sense that everyone had in LA that nothing happens anywhere else. Like, I guess, yeah, you could move to Ohio or Chicago or Idaho, but there goes your life. And it's such a pleasant surprise when you get out, and all of a sudden those other influences that were projecting on the screen of your life are gone, and you realize none of that was true. But that's the power of your mind, and that's how your mind interacts with life. Now, because we are creatures of habit, because you pretty much indulge in the same 3 to 5 gripes, 3 to 5 joys every single day, what you project on the screen of life is pretty predictable. The difference between a common person and a spiritual warrior is that a common person looks at what's happening on the screen and says, see, I was right. They see it as confirmation of how life is and their life view. When somebody who's spiritually trained enters in the same situation, they look up and say, oh, okay, I just projected that on the screen. That's, it's starting here and then going there. A spiritual warrior knows that life really doesn't have any characteristics beyond what you give it. That's why life is so different from one person to another. That's why 2 people can be sitting in the same room listening to the same talk, and they both walk away having heard something completely different. There's nothing more depressing than reading a spiritual student's journal, because you know what you said, and then you read what they actually heard of that, and it's like a sliver of what you were trying to hand them. But everybody is kind of seeing through the lens of their life views. And it holds their life in place. It holds their day in place. Now, I think all of that is stuff you could find in just about any self-help book. So let's take it one step further. Why then do we meditate? What does meditation do? If the contents of your mind are constantly projecting symbolically onto the screen of your life, when you suddenly empty your head of all content, everything that you're conjuring, you just stop. You just stop it. You let it go. And you sit there for a while and just let the energy that moves through you move through that clean vehicle of your mind, just present in the moment, just open and released. If your mind is a projector on the screen of life, what is that going to do to the dream of your life? It's going to start projecting things that confirm reality. Prior to that, you're just confirming all your fears, right? I've often said to you guys, and I say this because my teacher used to say it, that you will always have what you fear most and what you desire most, because that's where your attention is. So that's what you're going to be projecting onto the screen of your mind. And it's usually just, a battle between those two things, your fears and your desires. One of them wins someday, and you either get your biggest fear or your biggest wish. But when you can really just step into the tensile balance of this eternal silent moment, you start to attract something very interesting into the dream time of your life, into your the things that show up in your life. And what you start pulling in are teaching moments. You will be walking through life, and all of a sudden you'll just find yourself running into some total stranger and having some random conversation, but that random conversation will carry a key in it that will unlock layer after layer after layer of your personality over a period of years. That's what happens when you start spending time in the silence. That's what happens when you start taking it with you into your daily life. When you go to a gas station, can you stay open, quiet, and in the present moment for that entire period of time? And then notice what sort of things come to you that day. It's different. You'll start having more profound experiences. One of the things it'll do is it'll keep you coming back to talk to a teacher, right? When you guys are doing the practice, you are more likely to attend a class like this, whether it's my class or some other valid teacher. And so in that way, because when I speak to you, I empty out my mind, what comes forward are the things that are necessary to move you forward as a group. And actually, because you are a small group, it's going to usually be quite specific to you. And it's not because I, as a personality, am having some psychic moment in all of your heads. It's just because when I am speaking from a place of silence and you are listening from a place of silence, then we're both coming from a place of completion. And so what comes forward is going to be what's needed to complete the parts of you that are incomplete. You're pulling that to yourself by stepping into the completion of this moment. So we've come around full circle. That's what we started talking about, was this moment is complete because your sense of lack is an illusion. And when you step into this moment, you no longer leave this jabbering personality mind in charge of the screen. And what's left is this deep, vast part of you that knows every blade of grass on this planet intimately. It knows the beginning, middle, and end of everything. It won't put it in linear terms for you, but it can respond from that place. Anna's saying silence speaks volumes. It's all there. That silence, what it really speaks is a sound. It's this kind of high-pitched ringing sound. I think it hits everyone a little differently, and I think in the beginning for some people it's a little lower in pitch. But if you really listen, it's always there, this ringing of the silence. And the more time you spend in the silence, just absorbed in that ringing, you start to stumble upon these moments with that where all of a sudden you become fluent in it. And you come to realize that it is just filled with wordless information. And your body is like an instrument that can just understand it all at once. Now, the road to that is the road I've given you, right? You just have to learn how to sit and focus and consistently let go of the personality mind jabbering so that you can just return to the breath, or return to whatever it is you're placing your attention on. Return to a mantra, or return to your dishes. When you get really good, you can return to your TV show. You can actually focus on a TV show from the perspective of reality. And you know what? You see everything. You see so much. You end up watching a completely different show than the person next to you. I've always been a fan of horror movies and nobody has really understood why. And it's because I'm not watching the same movie you're watching. I'm watching amazing feats of heroism. I'm watching, people who survive barely with some limbs, but against the odds and still run in to go try and save their friends. There's so much to see. And you're not processing it through all of your garbage. You're just open and paying attention. And when it's done, it just leaves the mind. Just as if, you were a lake reflecting the clouds passing overhead. Once the clouds pass, the lake isn't hanging on to that reflection anymore. The negatives of all of those things, they start and stop with you. They start and stop with your personal story. Now, with that said, you are sharing a screen with other people. And so if you have people in your life that their starting and stopping is consistently negative, you're going to feel their suffering. And I have yet to figure out a way to be in this world working with people where their suffering doesn't have a ton of credence in my life. But the idea is to stay awake so that you understand what's happening. The idea is, well, for starters, if you're finding that you're suffering, you first look to your own mind and you quiet it through the techniques you've been taught. If you're having trouble doing that, you'll do the moving up and down the mountain technique to kind of temper things, and then you'll quiet it. You'll do what you have to do to get where you have to go. You do that and you're in the top, 1% of human functioning. But if you do that and the feeling doesn't go away, what that means is the feeling isn't yours. It means you're feeling somebody else. You can block that for a few moments by putting your hand over your solar plexus. You're all connected to people right now that you're feeling and you're not even aware of it. Try it right now. Put your hand over your solar plexus and see how your energy changes. That little buffer that it gives you. We've done this before. Well, when it's really bad, that can be a huge relief, putting your hand there. But you can't live with your hand there. So we all have to learn how to deal with some suffering. The point is, you know where it's coming from. You know where your responsibility starts and stops. And you are accountable for your projection onto the screen of life. The goal does not become to feel great all the time, because it's just not attainable in this physical body. You're sharing this world with a bunch of people who aren't feeling very good. The goal becomes that you have freedom to project what you want onto the screen of life. You're still sharing that screen, but when that bad feeling comes in and you notice yourself starting to get annoyed or angry, you realize, if I get annoyed or angry, I am going to magnify this problem on the screen of life. And so instead you become the balancing factor. We've talked about that before. Do you remember heart training? Where you are breathing in the problem in front of you, and then in between the inhale and the exhale, you are becoming an antidote to that, and then you are breathing that antidote out. That's what that is. That's you taking responsibility for your reflection on the screen of life. We have a short amount of time on this planet, right? We're here for a blip. Hang on 1 second. Let me just mute us. There we go. You're here for a very short amount of time. Your goal in any moment should be to leave that moment cleaner, better than it was when you got there. If you're going to be a part of people's lives, you can't demand that they bring no suffering into your life, okay? Unless they are spiritually practicing, and almost no one is, they are going to bring suffering into your life. You got to lean into it. So what you do is you make your life about your footprint. You know, what kind of footprint do you leave in any given moment? And if you've spent your day making things better, when you go to sleep at night, you're going to feel that. You know, one of the hallmarks of becoming a clearer, more loving person usually is that your sleep improves. But that's my teaching for you today. The contents of your mind are projecting on the screen of life. The average man or woman then sees that projection and says, that's what life is like. The spiritual warrior sees that projection and says, I need to change what I'm projecting. The average man or woman, because they believe that's a quality of life, have taken the locus of control and placed it external to themselves. You will never be happy if you feel like all of the control is outside of your reach. So instead, you take on the burden of freedom. You take on the burden of responsibility. In full awareness that you know, not everything on the screen is your projection. But that when you see something on the screen, your response is going to project something. And is it going to project something that makes it better or worse? And usually in those moments, rather than trying to project an opposite, the best thing you can do is just step into the meditative state. Let the meditative state decide what that antidote is. If you try and decide, you're going to be pulling from your limited past. If instead it just comes as a response to the moment from the meditative state, then it's going to be pulling from the vast everything, from the pregnant emptiness that has every single possibility hiding within it. And while that other person learns from your projection, so will you. And in fact, you will start pulling things towards you that continue to teach you, that continue to pull you deeper into reality and further away from the prison of your own personality. How clear was that? Does that all make sense? You're welcome to ask any questions. Good. This is how a spiritual warrior lives their life. And this is what you should be looking at. This was what you should be walking into. Great, Sarah. Okay, why don't we go back into the meditative state? And I want you to just get yourself to that place where your mind is completely released into this moment. You are hanging on to nothing. And then I want you, from that place, to just spread out into the entire moment. And anything you feel, any projection you feel from another person, just make yourself available to become the antidote. Don't worry about what the antidote is. Just make yourself available. Okay? Nothing to understand or figure out here. It's something you feel your way into. So let's just try it. You might not catch it your first time around, but it's a skill worth learning. Step back into this moment. Throw your mind and body wide open. And if you'll just stay in this open space, you'll find that it unfolds more and more with each breath. Let yourself see, let yourself hear, let yourself feel. And let those senses spread out in all directions. Whatever is contained in the present moment. Just keep reaching like a flower reaching for the sun. Do that for a bit. Become curious about the reflection of a silent mind. A silent, open mind is your ticket to finally stepping into a new day. Something legitimately new, fresh, evolving. Let go of time. Just be expansively patient. Absolute expansive patience in this moment. No preconceived notions. No more telling life about itself. Instead, you open yourself wide so that life can show you what it is. So that life can show you its secrets. So much to see. Right here in this moment, so much to experience. And in the process of reaching for that, the authenticity of this eternal moment, you literally step away in that moment from all your mental pathology. Because it all requires your attention to sustain itself. It requires your constant comparisons of this moment to some other theoretical moment. The second you stop comparing, the problem no longer exists. The second you stop comparing, you're free. You were the problem. Promise. And the beauty of that means you are the solution. Even though the solution is to let go of you. To retain only the part that doesn't require an internal dialogue to constantly hold itself up. I can feel that you've caught it. It's a big deal. If someone can show you where it is, then you can practice it. And I'm pretty sure you've all caught it. And if you have trouble finding it again, you can find it in the memory of this moment. Recreate the moment and catch it again. Every moment in life is an initiation, for better or worse. You want to hang on to the for betters. My advice would be that you crystallize this realization into a few sentences before you go to bed tonight. Just so you have something you can hang on to get back there quickly. funny how from the perspective of the personality it sounds so esoteric. But the reality of it is actually so natural. Everything else is so conjured and weird. This is just you being. Sometimes I hear myself talking and I think, oh, great, we sound like a cult. These teachings always sound so obscure. But then when you're actually in the result of them, it's just about showing up. It's just about being here for real. It's everything else that's so extreme. This psychotic web of stories that we walk around with all day, that we use to torture ourselves and everyone else. That's what's extreme. That's the cult. This is just getting back to real life. You can feel that a little bit, can't you? That's right, Anna, stepping into simplicity. Most of us have lost our simplicity. And you get back there and it's the same simplicity of childhood, except that it comes with the experience of having dove. I guess it's a hazard of letting go of your mind. But having dived into the complexity and found your way out, it means that you can navigate this world a little differently because you know how it's working. When people are manipulating you, you can see it. And you know what they're doing, and you can play along, or you can fight against it, or whatever. But what you don't do is get caught up in it. Easier said than done. But that's the ideal. All right, everybody. So I want you to work with this week. Okay, give yourself some time, where if you know you're going to go do something, maybe it's like a task that's going to take you 10 minutes or something. Step into the meditative state, deeply into that state, and just stay in that empty silence. Build up some time in that space so that life can start reflecting it back to you. Some of you are early enough in your training that it won't reflect it immediately. It might reflect it that afternoon, or it might even reflect it the next day. There's this kind of block that happens, but it's not a total block. It's just a block in time. It puts a little space between the cause and the effect. And the more you do it, the more that space will narrow. And that's when you'll, walk out into life, and the second you say something bad, a bird poops on your head. You have this instant response from life. But it doesn't matter. Start depositing some time into that meditative headspace. Let it charge. And then give it a chance to reflect onto the screen of life. And be watching for it. It'll be something special. All right, everyone. If there are any questions, I am happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to let you get back to your night. This is a great group in here tonight. So thank you. You guys did a great job opening up. I can feel the energy is beautiful. All right. Have a great night. Thanks. Actually, no, it's your energy. I'm just telling you what you already know. All right. Have a great night. Bye.